So this is usually the part of the show where Oz comes on, asks me a question, and we usually do something that gets a laugh here, but we're really not in a laughing mood this week. The CFL I consider as a family, fans, players, coaches, media, and we lost one of our own this weekend with the shooting death of Mylan Hicks in Calgary. So we're just going to take a moment of silence and respect and memory, and we'll be right back with the rest of the show.
Welcome to the Rouge White&Blue CFL Podcast, as presented by the GruelingTruth.net. My name is Oz Davis. I am the co-host of the show. Joining me, as you just heard in the intro, is Joe Pritchard. Joe, how are things in general this week?
It hasn't been a good week. Sunday was probably one of the more rough days as a sports fan and just a member of the planet Earth in general.
How about it? Yeah, I'm not going to comment on this too much about the death of a 23-year-old male. I mean, by a gunshot. We still don't know. We're recording this on Monday. This incident was reported, I guess, Sunday morning. This is when Coach Huffnagel heard about this. It was 9 a.m. on Sunday morning, I guess. Great way to start your Sunday morning. I'm not going to comment on this too much. Over the weekend, we also had another incident here in the States, this thing in Charlotte. I will write this up for the GruelingTruth.net. I'm not going to comment too much on this, but come on, people. Let's come together a little bit here. We have bigger crises than being afraid of each other. Now is really not the time in our planet's history to be taking pot shots at each other like this. Rather, we really ought to be coming together in what I think is a time of several crisis points. All football aside, even stuff like certain elections aside, let's come together a little bit and recognize and celebrate our differences rather than be afraid of them. So that's just kind of my appeal to humanity based on the light of this incident. In any case, we will get to the slate of football. Despite the fact that life goes on, we did have some nice games this weekend, some interesting twists and turns in the CFL as we go forward with the season. And the playoff picture is really starting to take shape now. But with a bit of seriousness, let's go through the games of last week, talk about what we saw on the playing field. Right. Okay. So game 1 of week 14, we had Ottawa RedBlacks 29, Toronto Argonauts 12. I guess Dan Lefevre's miracle comeback story is over, Joe. I guess we can close the book on that.
Yeah, I think it was inevitable. it was basically given no chance even before he had played one game with the trade for Drew Willie already nearly set in stone before he even had the chance to show what he could do. But when you put that much on a quarterback, when you give up that many resources to bring in a quarterback, it's inevitable he's going to be playing sooner rather than later, and sooner happened on Friday night.
I was surprised. I did not think that this would happen. But then again, I'm a Rams follower where we're going to be benching our number 1 overall pick for 2 years, I think. So maybe I'm just, in first gear on this anyway. But I was surprised we saw him so soon. I mean, yes, Dan Lefevre did have a fairly brutal first half, 13 of 19 for just 72 yards and 1 pick. But as soon as, I think a Winnipeg fan of this season might agree that Drew Willie comes in for Dan Lefevre, or comes in for your quarterback, is rarely an expression that leads to good things on the football field in 2016. And so this game pretty much ended the way it began. Ottawa got off to the 13-0 start and ended with a 17-point margin of victory. I'm going to get a little bit ahead of myself here. Actually, we can just go on to the next game. We can talk about the RedBlacks a bit later, but the second game of the weekend was Edmonton Eskimos 27, BC Lions 23. Now, the Eskimos put themselves into that number 6 spot, that sort of crossover spot that a Western team could quite easily get this season with the Eastern Division playing the way it is right now. So now they're a game up on the Toronto Argonauts. The Argonauts in week 14-15 are still unsure about their quarterback after pinning, some would say a little bit foolishly, all their hopes at the beginning of the season on Ricky Ray. Meanwhile, Edmonton pulls off certainly one of the upsets of the year probably to this point. Who do you like coming down the stretch between these two?
Between the two, Edmonton, I would say, all things being equal, I'd say Edmonton. They've been getting a bad rap lately, I think. Their defense isn't as bad as what people seem to want to say. They've been losing games, but they've been losing games by very narrow margins, and they took the Stamps all the way to the wall. They did lose the next week to Saskatchewan, but as we're finding out, Saskatchewan seems to turn the corner at least a little bit here. And most of their losses this year are of the very close to overtime varieties. So they're at least hanging in there. They're at least competitive with even the best teams in the league. And if they can catch a couple of breaks, there's no reason to believe that they can't finish even 500 at this point, or even a touch better if they get real hot.
Well, we talked about this coming into the season. What this roster looked like going into week 1 was superstars at some positions and big holes in others. You say the secondary isn't as bad as their reputation, but the secondary has been very shoddy this season. And we'll say this again, haven't liked the offensive line play all year. Even in this game, gave up 3 sacks. Mike Riley did have a heck of a game despite that. Let's see, I got the numbers right here. 24 of 31, 300 yards exactly, 1 passing touchdown and 1 rushing touchdown versus no interceptions. So pretty nice work there, but I'm not really confident about this offensive line once again. I think that a 6 seed is basically where an uneven team like this deserves to be, don't you?
Right, and there's some talk from Edmonton fans that taking a ride through the East shouldn't be too hard, but the problem I have with that is that both playoff games, assuming they would win the first one, would be on the road. Right. And they are inconsistent. I mean, they're 6 and 7, I believe, for a reason. Now, mind you, if they catch a couple of breaks, they're 8 and 5 instead of 6 and 7, but they haven't caught those breaks. So I think a team that crosses over is simply, even if they have a record even or above even the first place team out there, it's a really tough road to hoe because you have 2 road playoff games against the top 2 teams in the East, and if you were that good, you'd be in the Western playoffs. So I'm not really on the bandwagon of we've got as good of a shot to win the East as anybody does, that I've heard from a few Edmonton fans. But you can't rule it out completely, I will say that. But again, a crossover team is in that position for a reason. They're not that good, so it's really hard to root for my team to be a crossover team.
Right. Yeah, they could certainly sneak into the Grey Cup, but I tell you what, it would be hard to imagine both the number 1 and the number 2 seeds in the East backing in, which is what would be required for Edmonton, who has not exactly an easy schedule, might I remind you, coming down the stretch. I can't imagine. Even if they did cross over, which would be great, which would be interesting for them and everything, I can't see it. I can't see, again, Hamilton or Ottawa assuming that those would be the top two teams beating out Toronto for that last spot. I can't imagine that both of them won't have something figured out by the time the playoffs come around. I just can't imagine it. These two teams are also uneven and inconsistent as well, but heck of a lot of talent on both of those teams, and certainly enough talent to win a game or two, especially at home. Again.
Yeah, there seems to be about 4 teams that are all in that mix of, you can't really rule them out, but you can't really pick them to do a lot either. And one of these 4 teams is going to make the Grey Cup. Right.
I'm predicting right now that no matter how this thing shakes out, there will be murmurs about reseeding, because it could very well be that the top 3 teams going into these playoffs are coming out of the West this year. And
you hear that every time a crossover is even a potential thing.
Right.
Look, this is just the way the league's set up. This is the way it's been traditionally. There's a reason it's set up this way, and I think it would really kind of hurt some of the rivalries if they made the change to go to a straight seeding system.
No, well, I mean, at that point, anytime you start talking about that, just like they start talking about that in the NBA, you just go, okay, so what's the point of divisions then? I mean, we talk about this every year in the NFL, that a team threatens to go 7-9 and make the playoffs. Okay, if you get rid of that, what's the point of having divisions at all then? Just get rid of them. So I think we like the divisions. We like the divisions in the CFL, don't we?
Yeah, well, I'm a traditionalist in that sense, so you're not going to be able to win that, sway me to your side, put it that way. If you're going for, let's just drop it all and seed them according to record. I don't buy that.
Yeah. No, probably not. The BC, actually, I was struck by, what I was most struck by in this game, I mean, aside from the way that the Eskimos stuck with it the whole way, was that the way it seemed like a flashback to like week 2 or 3 of this season. I mean, here you have the Eskimos, playing pretty complete game, looking more like the defending champs that they had been in a few previous weeks. And you have the BC Lions playing half a game. Here's Manny Arsenault getting 7 passes for 164 yards and 2 touchdowns, basically all in the first half. And while Manny's statistics are awesome, like the Manny show often is, here's John Jennings, again, looking like the regressed quarterback of week 3, completing just 9 passes for 85 yards and 0 touchdowns to anybody who wasn't Manny Arsenault. Any insights into the BC mystery that has returned?
Well, it's like I've been saying all year. Jennings is going to have some games that are just going to make you go, wow, both ways.
Yeah, but we hadn't said that in a while. We hadn't.
But he's still a young quarterback. This is his first full season. There are going to be games like this. There are going to be fewer games if everything goes right, which I still don't see any reason why it wouldn't. There'll be fewer games like that the next year, the fewer games like that the next year, and so on and so forth as he matures. But every once in a while, he's going to have one of those games where you can feel like he's not going forward. He's kind of stagnating. So I would expect to see, again, less of that going forward. But there's been a few this year, and there may be 1 or 2 more lurking, hopefully for BC, not in November.
Yeah, they should hope for that in about week 20, when placement won't matter anymore so much. Right, okay. Well, once again, it seems like Calgary plays in the game of the week every week. They certainly did again this week. Calgary Stampeders 36, Winnipeg Blue Bombers 34. Now, how much are you liking this game despite the fact that the Bombers lost?
Well, for all the world, it didn't look like they had any answers to Calgary. They ended up finding some answers, even if it was just a bit too little, just a bit too late. they've at least now achieved some measure of success against the Stampeders. They've won the second half, hands down. Now, if they happen to bump into Calgary one more time, it would most likely be in the West Final. Now they at least have a little bit of something if they do get to that point again, where they can go, hey, we've been in this situation, in this place. Let's wipe out the jitters here. We know we can hang with these guys.
It's unfortunate it took so long, because
it took just a little bit too long. Yes.
Yeah.
Or maybe it started 20 seconds too early.
Perhaps.
That's the beauty of the CFL, though. Even if you only have 20 seconds on the clock, you have a chance.
Well, How about it? How about that? What did you think? Okay, what did you think when 20 seconds left, Bombers go up, right? But we got to kick this thing off, and then Bo Levi-Mitchell gets the ball. What at that point? What odds were you giving at that point that Bo was going to get enough yardage to get the field goal kicked?
Well, given who it is and what they've managed to accomplish this year, I thought it was a pretty good possibility. Even so, it only, it was not a happy moment when the field goal went through from Rene Paredes from forever away after after all the talk about him being hurt during the game. It's like trying to
he missed the one. He missed the one previously.
Well, that too. I mean, that's too much to expect him to miss twice in a row.
So,
twice in big situations. I think he might have had another one in there somewhere. But there was a couple of he's not going to miss very often. And when they got to that point, it's like, okay, they bloodied their nose. They might not have won the decision. They might have lost some points, but they sure weren't knocked out. That's for sure.
Yeah,
the
morale loss. Sure. Yeah. What can you tell us? Tell us something, Joe. Maybe you have this secret. Who is this Tim Flanders guy? Who is this Tim Flanders guy that got 95 yards on 11 carries? Probably had the secret play of the game by getting that long run, the 50-yard run to break up the shutout. Who is this guy?
Well, he wasn't a secret. If you watch the Bombers in the preseason, they featured him pretty extensively. He's definitely not going to get a lot of touches when Andrew Harris is in the game because of the ratio. But he's proven over the last couple of weeks here that he can make things happen. Clearly, he's not going to get a lot of playing time in Winnipeg. He may have to make his CFL bones elsewhere, but we'll take what we can get at the moment.
Okay. All right. I got a couple more questions for you because, this was such a great game, and I'm sure you're somewhat happy about it. All right. For you, what was the better highlight play? Okay, the Flanders 50-yard run or that double play combination, that Burnett to Green to Bass for the fumble recovery touchdown? Which did you enjoy more?
I think it was a fumble recovery because at that point, that told me, hey, not only are they coming back and throwing a few punches here, they're starting to land a few here. They're starting to make things a little bit more interesting than I thought they'd get.
Oh yeah. That was when it was like, okay, better start paying attention now. It might just be.
I'll tell you what. Right at halftime, I went out to mow the lawn and I brought Bob Irving out with me on CGOB radio for the first half of the third quarter here while I finished mowing the lawn because I figured, you know what, I'm going to keep tabs on the game. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to enjoy listening to Bob Irving because listening to him is a very enjoyable experience. And get something accomplished at the same time. And by the time I got back into the house, they were just about to score their second touchdown, and it's like, well, let's enjoy the rest of this thing here. And I enjoyed it, I did.
Oh, you must know at this point that Winnipeg is this year's, don't turn off your television team. This is the don't change the channel team of 2016. They hang. They hang.
That's why I took the radio. That's why I took the radio out with me, or the cell phone acting as a radio, because that was probably the only window of 2 or 3 hours this weekend I would have had to get the lawn done because of this crazy weather. It's like they decided. It's like the weather gods decided, hey, by the way, we know you want this 3-hour chunk, but this is the only time you're going to get, because by the time the game was over, it was already cloudy and started drizzling.
See, that's funny. That's funny because I thought God was a Blue Bombers fan.
Well, did you see the end of the game?
Touche. Okay.
No, it's the Dalai Lama. That's the Blue Bombers fan. We have pictorial proof of that.
I got you. Or Thor, right? Because of all the weather delays. Right. Okay. So last question on this game. All jokes, all kidding, jinxing, modesty, reverse jinxing, all that stuff aside. Okay. Last weekend, Winnipeg and BC both lose. This morning, or I guess, Sunday morning, the Grueling Truth power rankings come out. Winnipeg number 2, BC number 3. Right now, Joe, is Winnipeg a better team than BC Lions?
I'm going to say yes, for the reason that the Bombers just won 7 in a row and almost made it 8 against Calgary.
Okay.
We're going to find out rather soon anyway.
Yes.
Which of these two teams is better off? The Bombers play BC back-to-back, or at least 2 in a row for Winnipeg. I don't know if they're home and home because there's a bye week in there somewhere. But for the Bombers anyway, it's back-to-back against BC. Mm-hmm. That's gonna determine second place in the West, I think. If a team can get a sweep in that's going to be the end of the game right there.
Yeah, I think that should ice those number 2 and number 3 spots in the West. Playoff picture is getting clear here. Playoff picture is getting quite easy to see at this point. This one muddied things a little bit. Those Saskatchewan Roughriders 20, Hamilton Tiger Cats 18. And I guess this one we can call just another wacky quarterback-based story in the CFL. Here comes Mitchell Gale, the little-seen Mitchell Gale, the emergency quarterback coming in the fourth quarter for Darian Durant and winning the ball game. But let me ask you this. We'll go into the details of this game in a little bit. But I got to ask you this first, okay? Is this a Saskatchewan win or a Tiger Cat loss?
Honestly, I think there's elements of both here.
Okay.
We've seen Saskatchewan's been playing better football as of late. The 2 straight wins, and they hung in both games against the Bombers. Trying to think if there's one in between there too, but I can't remember offhand. But they've been playing better football as of late, so you can't really just say Hamilton lost this game. On the other hand, Hamilton lost this game. Can we just stop pretending that they're a good team?
But here's the thing. Look, the first 2 drives of this game said it all. This was the Tiger Cats season, right? First play of the game, Zach Laris throws the pick, right? And it seems to me like he's done this a couple of times this year where literally, at least on the first drive, he throws it away. But then you go to that second drive, everything's cool, man. Zip, 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 zip. 6 completions in a row, 103 yards it says here? Easy as pie, right? I mean, that's this team in a nutshell. It's Jekyll and Hyde. It's Jekyll and Hyde. Is this team a good team or a bad team? My answer is yes.
They do have their moments. I will give them that.
I know.
But since Collaros has been back, they're 3-4.
I know
the narrative all off season, and I bought into it, I'll be honest, was that if they could survive at 500 until Zach Collaros came back, or even a touch under, if they were just a game under when Collaros came back, everything would be okay because he'd come back, he'd have a few rough games, they'd get hot, and everybody'd be happy. I don't see the hot part happening. And special teams, well, that was a huge strength last year. It is anything but this year. So they're not getting any help from that part of the game. Collaros is better than a lot of CFL quarterbacks, I will say, but still is having some consistency issues. I wonder if there's still a bit of rust there, honestly, because there's no reason to believe he's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league, but the results as far as wins are just not there this year for Hamilton.
Yeah, again, you can talk about the guys who are more physically talented than Mitchell, but I don't think there's a team in the CFL that wouldn't plug in Mitchell right now at quarterback. In fact, he's probably, in just terms of sheer physical skill, he's probably in the bottom 4 or 5 in this league rather than the top 4 or 5 starters in this league. But still, he wins. He wins ball games. Collaros is a Superman back there, but I don't know. This season they've just run into themselves repeatedly. What the one thing I was looking for in this game, I did not see it live. I watched it on the replay. I watched the highlights from it. But the one thing that I was looking out for in this game is, of course, the special teams. No real problems this game. I mean, okay, so you don't like missing 2 field goals in the third and the fourth quarter, but at least they're not getting killed on the punts and the kickoff returns anymore.
They finally put some of that streaky punts blocked in consecutive weeks, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no punt block. Right, so Hamilton, is this team going to straighten it out? I mean, you're not even convinced they're good anymore. You've totally lost all faith. Can this team make a workable 60-minute attack? Can they do it by the time the playoffs come around?
I haven't seen it. The one game, they were just a monster like they were last year. That was a ridiculous month-and-a-half run they had there. But the one game where you kind of saw, I should say there was 2 in recent memory here. But the game against Saskatchewan was the 60-minute effort.
Yeah.
And then I forget if it was Labor Day. I think it was the Labor Day game and not the rematch. But yeah, the Labor Day game where they went down 27-7 and they just stormed back and crushed Toronto the rest of the way. Yeah. That you could see some flickers of that too. You could still see that ability is around, but it just doesn't show up. It's a question of which team shows up this week. It's very hard to tell anymore whether they're going to be able to go on any sort of run. Whether even if they win the East, are they going to be able to put together 2 solid games back to back?
Yeah, especially since the home mystique is gone. I mean, that's been blown away.
It's gone and buried at this point. I don't think people even talk about it anymore.
Yeah. That dried up quick. That was one of the storylines of last year, was how good Hamilton was at home and how good Toronto was away. Both of those storylines have now gone away this year, completely disappeared, unfortunately. I'm not even sticking with the Toronto is awesome away anymore now that they're 500. Right. Okay. Next week's games?
Yeah, let's go.
Next week's games. Let's do the bridge, and then we'll come back, and we'll make our picks. Before we make our picks, I got the big confession to make here. Going into this week, I was 1 game under 50%. I needed to go 3-1 to get myself above 50% in CFL Pick'em. Sure enough, I went 1-3. Damn it.
As did I, and I would have been very, very happy going 0-4, but what can you do?
That's right. You actually picked against your Winnipegs. Yeah, that's right. I said in my column last week, I said, if all the underdogs win, that's really going to shake things up and make this table look really strange. And it almost happened. It came within 20 seconds of happening, right? All 4 underdogs might have won. Oh, no, wait, that's not true because Toronto was not the underdog. That's right. Toronto did not. I'm sorry, Toronto was the underdog, but they were not in danger of winning. So I have to take that back. We almost had. We had a couple of underdogs winning, so pretty good. All right, let's go to next week. We've got the opening game is, hey, we're back to this one. Winnipeg hosting the Edmonton Eskimos. Of course, these two teams have already played twice. Pretty interesting circumstances. It's been a long time since they met. In week 4, these two teams met with Drew Willie as the Winnipeg quarterback. That might have been, no, that wasn't quite his last start, but it was pretty close. And that was...
Not that I'm bitter or anything.
That one went to Edmonton 20-16, and then in week 6, Winnipeg won, and I believe that was the first game without Drew Willie at quarterback. Am I correct on that? And that was Nichols' first game?
First start.
Yeah, Winnipeg took that 30-23. I kind of like Winnipeg in this game. I kind of felt like Edmonton took advantage of BC's general slack play in the second half, and I like Winnipeg's stick-to-itiveness. I mean, if any team plays 60 minutes besides Calgary, it's Winnipeg, and I think 60 minutes of play is enough to beat Edmonton. Edmonton's got too many holes.
I think the Bombers win too, but this is going to be a huge game as far as the Western standings go. Because Winnipeg at 8-5, we got Edmonton at 6-7. If Winnipeg wins, you can it's going to be very, very tough for Edmonton to catch up, especially given that Winnipeg would have won the season series at that point. However, you can make this Edmonton win. All of a sudden, Edmonton's got the season series, and they're only one game back with Winnipeg. So this is a huge game for Winnipeg to show that they could deal with adversity coming off of last week's loss here as this unit, and that they have some killer instincts, because if they put Edmonton away here, it would be almost impossible for Edmonton to catch up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what some official for Edmonton said that on TSN a couple of weeks ago. Said basically every game now is a playoff game for the Eskimos, and it's true. It's true. They're gonna have to pretty much nail every one of these games to even get into that crossover position. It's unfortunate for them because they've got the whole slate almost against the West. You know, they got one game against Montreal, every other game is against the West, and yet they're fighting for a spot in the East. So it's kind of a strange situation for Edmonton, but I don't know. It's like we were talking about before. I just wonder if they have enough. I don't believe that's a complete team anymore. Right, game 2. Calgary goes to Hamilton. Bit of a mismatch. I'm stalling for time while I look at the game line on this one. I'm really interested what the point spread is. Of course, I'm going to go Calgary here. How wide of a margin of victory are you looking at here, Joe? Or do you think that Hamilton is going to pull one of these, waking up in the fourth quarter and scoring a whole bunch of points and making it look really close?
I think there's about a 10-point margin here. I think
10 points
Calgary is going to be the more consistent team. I mean, clearly they did not play the best second half last week, but there's very few times where Calgary has issues staying in games for the whole time. The BC game where they made their miraculous comeback notwithstanding, they've been pretty consistently, and this was an issue that they had over the past couple of years, is every once in a while they'd take a quarter or a half off and then make these big comebacks. But that's not been happening so much over the past, I would say, a couple months here. So I think given that Hamilton seems to be the team doing that this year, I think Calgary proved last week that if they get a big margin on you, good luck. Winnipeg did everything they could, scratch, clawed, and fought, and Calgary went and wiped away 2 quarters worth of work in 20 seconds. So I'm definitely sticking with Calgary here, and I think they put them away inside the final 3 minutes.
I mean, BC has found this out this year. Edmonton has found this out this year. Now Winnipeg has found this out there. It's not enough to bring everything and the kitchen sink. You have to bring more. You have to, once Calgary has dug that hole underneath you, you have to dig your way out and then climb a mountain on top of that to win these games. I mean, if anybody...
And you do bring up a good point. They did have that Edmonton game, too, where they fell behind by quite a bit, scratched and clawed their way back, too. I would probably say my larger point is that they definitely have killer instinct, and once they've got you, they tend not to give you up.
Yeah. I mean, again, Winnipeg played a hell of a game last week to even, make that respectable, much less to actually get the lead at one point. I mean, just nice. Again, just the stick-to-itiveness team of the year in Winnipeg there. The line for this game is only 3 points. Only a 3-point spread for Calgary in this game. So, I don't know, any sort of gambling types might want to look that way for an away dog win against the spread. All right,
this is a game I could see. Because this is a game I could see Hamilton having 2 good quarters in, and still not having it be enough.
Right. Yeah, Hamilton cannot bring the Jekyll and Hyde game against Calgary, and I don't think they have another game. At least they haven't shown it in months and months and months. So. I can't see it. Calgary winning by more than a field goal, that seems likely to me. But then again, this is the CFL, and I'm under 500 in pick'em. So, right, I blame it on the first half of the season, though. I always do. Right, third game, Ottawa RedBlacks at BC Lions. BC Lions a 5.5-point favorite. That feels about right. Let's see. What else do I have on this game here? Hang on just a moment. Okay, let's see. Oh, not too much. I'm thinking that the BC defense just has too much. This Ottawa RedBlacks offense, I realize they've gone through a lot with the quarterback shuffling, but in general, it seems to me that this offense has looked less and less and less impressive as this season goes on. I loved in the early part of the season how this offense was able to transition from one quarterback to another without and back again without really losing a beat in terms of the line and in terms of the receivers. But lately, the pace has just slowed down. I don't like the communication that's going on out here. This is a team almost in devolution right now. Still have a winning record. Still close to the top of that Eastern Division. But wow. I don't know. I talked before about how not every Eastern team can back into the playoffs. I think a few of these Eastern teams are trying to. I'm definitely going BC plus touchdown.
Yeah, I'm going BC too. It's been hard to watch Ottawa kind of come apart over the past couple of weeks here. The East was in their grasp. If they could have kept the pedal down for a couple more weeks, unfortunately they had injuries upon injuries and quarterback switch after quarterback switch due to some injuries here, and then finally going back to Harris, although he has not been impressive as of late either. It's almost like they've lost that explosiveness. The big thing over the past couple weeks was,
absolutely.
Let's get the ball to Chris Williams in the flat, and let's see him take that 70 yards, or let's see him take it 50 yards. That's not happening much anymore. Defenses are clearly on top of that, and nobody else seems to be stepping up to be the explosive guy. So now it's all on. Now they're trying to find a new way of making that offense click, and it hasn't gotten into gear yet. So they're another team like Hamilton, no less so. I think they're more consistent in their play, but they're another team where they've got that extra gear, but you don't see it very often. And when you do, it's impressive to behold. But then sometimes they can't even get out of neutral.
Yeah, that's what's really struck me about Ottawa this season is just as the season has progressed. I mean, last season this team was by far the funnest team to watch. You know, they had those 4 receivers, arguably 5 receivers, you know, just making up these crazy routes. You never know who was going to get hit by Burris. You never knew who the receiver of choice was, even on any given play. And it's just this year, I mean, this point in the season, this year, it just seems so vanilla all of a sudden. It just and it's like you said, that energy isn't there, that pop isn't there anymore. And I'm wondering what happened. This team would like a reset, I think, on this season. This team would like to reset the Madden game and just kind of start over without all the quarterback injury, insanity, and everything else that has happened, including Henry Burris's rant. I think they'd like it all back this year, because this is a team that really, really, really should have been a stronger Grey Cup contender, I thought, than they're looking like right now. They might still back into the Grey Cup at this point, but I can't imagine that they're a real serious contender to take the championship this year. Right. Okay, so finally we're ending up with – sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, in the offseason, I was actually expecting something of the sort where the offense couldn't quite make up for the defense. But after like the second or third week, I was kind of thinking maybe I was completely wrong about all of that. And it turns out it was just a couple of weeks where they had the offense clicking on all cylinders, and we haven't seen that since. So we will see if they can be a little bit more innovative on offense over the next couple of weeks. But I think they're starting to feel that loss of Jason Moss and what he brought to the team last year.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you wonder, I mean, okay, here's another early prediction for you. The Ottawa RedBlacks will be a heck of a lot more active in the offseason than they were this year. You know, that was one of the big mysteries in the offseason was not only, you know, why did they go out and get another top 5 CFL quarterback if they already had one last year, but also why in the heck weren't they making these other moves to improve, especially the defense? All they did was lose a couple of key players, including Justin Campicati, who played much better for them than he has for Saskatchewan, by the way, I might add. Guess who's on my fantasy team? But, yeah, I think that next year we'll see a lot more transactions out of this team than we did this year. They really need to address that. If they're not going to be the pinball machine on offense that they were last year, they can't be this loose on the defense next year. They can't. You know, you can't allow 34 points if you can't score 35. And I think this mentality is really catching up with them in the second half of the season. It's just way too loose on defense for this offense. It's not as fast as it was under Burris. Okay, finally we close out with the surprisingly intriguing Toronto Argonauts at Montreal Alouettes game. 2 weeks ago, I probably would have been turning off my television in advance before this game. But now all of a sudden, we've got all kinds of interesting subplots in this game. Here's Toronto fighting for their playoff life. Here's Montreal's first game under our interim head coach. Here's, you know, Toronto still trying to figure out their quarterback situation against the only team in the league that arguably has a more messed up quarterback situation than they do, Montreal. You know, like in this defense in Montreal, Toronto, of course, has this heavy, you know, turnover dependent defense, which Montreal is quite capable of feeding them, I'm sure. I decided in preparing for this podcast that I'm going to go with whoever you don't pick in this game. So who do you got?
So you've got Toronto then.
Okay. Really? You're going to go with the Owls? Okay. All right.
Here's why.
Okay.
So you've got the potential of Drew Willie starting for Toronto, which it hasn't worked out very well for anybody this year. And honestly, I'm really hoping that with an off-season under Milanovic, with some time that he can rebound, but this year it's just not going to happen for him.
Yeah. See,
you also have Jacques Chaplin in his first game calling the plays as the head coach.
Toronto doesn't have a lot of film on what his style of play calling is, unless they want to go back to previous stints in BC, and I believe Edmonton too, if I'm not mistaken. But he's got different personnel. He's worked with these players in different capacities here. But it'll be tough for Toronto to kind of guess which way Chapdelain's going to go with things right away. So I think between those two elements, and I believe this is a Montreal home game, right?
Yes, Montreal's at home.
Then I could see this would be just one of those games where Montreal comes out, surprises Toronto on offense, puts up a bunch of points in the first half, and then just hangs on for dear life as Toronto tries to scrap and claw its way back into the second half unsuccessfully.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, I can't imagine Drew Willie doing much against this Montreal defense. I mean, you may recall week one. He wasn't. Yeah, that game had some meaning for you. I don't really think that he's going to put up a lot of points against this Montreal defense. And yeah, you've hit, I think, on the one advantage that Montreal is going to have is that, okay, here's one game that coach is going to have adequate time to prepare for. I mean, he came in as coach right after the previous week's games, have the bye week. We're going to be able to formulate a coherent plan for this Toronto team, which, quite frankly, isn't that good. So, yes, I think this is the argument for Montreal. I just worry that there's just not enough on offense to beat anybody. You know, this is my thing at this point. It's just like, you know, I can imagine this game being 9-7 for God's sake. You know, with 5 Rouges. You know, there's just no offense on this Montreal team, and it's not getting better.
Well, we'll see, because they filled a huge hole in the coaching staff simply by having Chapdelain call the plays and run the squad here. I think it's agreed upon that Pop hasn't worked out as a head coach in any way, shape, or form. And then you're also taking the pressure off Anthony Calvillo to call plays as well. Because as any former star quarterback knows, it's a lot harder to be a head coach or an offensive coordinator and call plays when you don't have yourself on the field to execute them. You can ask Ron Lancaster how that worked out the first time around for him. CFL-wise, you can ask Bart Starr how that worked out for him in Green Bay.
Right.
And you could just go on and on with different examples of that, of a star player having to try to figure out how to make his team win without being on the field with them.
Right. Yeah. This is a situation that Montreal may be facing sooner than we'd like as well. Right. The sports book actually has Montreal as a 3-point favorite in here. And I'm saying that not because I'm espousing the virtues of gambling, but because this is going to be one of the last times I think I get to say Montreal is a favorite of the sports book for a long time, probably into 2017. So I just thought I'd get that in there. Right then, Joe, before we sign off, you're pretty happy this week, even though Winnipeg, had the close loss. You're pretty happy because your Green Bay Packers are looking lively now, huh?
Yes, there's something to having Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, even if he's had his issues over the past season. It's just nice to see him play well again, but you can hear a lot more about that over at the Titletown Huddle, so I'll save it for me and my co-host Aaron Depnick.
Right, yeah, sure. I'll get in a plug too. I got to say I had a great football weekend because I of course have loyalty to 3 football teams, one on each level. I'm a fan of the Los Angeles Rams in the NFL, and in the CFL, I'm a fan of the Montreal Alouettes. And, of course, in college, I cheer for my alma mater, the University of New Mexico Lobos. Well, the Lobos and the Alouettes both had bye weeks this week. Yeah, I mean, my Alouettes and my Lobos both had bye weeks this week, so I went 1-0. It was a great week. I don't think that's going to happen for the rest of the year. I don't think I'll go undefeated the rest of the year with those 3 teams. So I I was quite pleased to get the bye weeks. It's great when your team goes on bye in one respect because you have so much time for the other games. You know, I didn't have to. Last week I was catching up until like Tuesday evening on games that had been played on Saturday and Sunday. So I had the rather mellow viewing experience this week. But you can hear all about it on the Rams 2.0 weekly show. That's hosted by myself, Oz Davis, and I have Tony Hunter on every week. We're trying to arrange some interviews for the next couple of weeks, so I won't officially announce any names now, but take my word for it. We're going to have some names on that podcast. We're excited about that. All right, Joe. Anything else? Any other plugs you want to make?
I think we should be done tooting our own horns for this week.
Right. Yeah. I think we won't go into too much more detail. Right then, for Joe Pritchard, my name is Oz Davis. You have been listening to the Rouge White and Blue CFL Podcast here on the GruelingTruth.net. We thank you all for listening, and once more, rest in peace, Mylan Hicks.